very good afternoon, very good evening, all my friends, colleagues, students from India. A very good morning to you, Anaga, who is joining us from Toronto. I think it's 7:30 a.m. in the morning. And good afternoon, Teresa, joining us from London. It's such a pleasure. It's rather a matter of pride for me to see four of you joining me from different parts of the country, from different parts of the world in our inaugural Young Scholars Colloquium. I strongly believe every student of law and every alumni is a young scholar. They contribute to justice. They contribute to building a rule of law society. They contribute to institution building and nation building, and in this process, making a better world. Lawyers have always contributed significantly to almost every country's history, freedom movement, civil society movements. Whatever great has been achieved by various nations and various communities in the world, lawyers have played a very, very important role in that. So I must congratulate all of you to be part of this very special webinar, this very special colloquium. To introduce this panel to our audience, I must say, Anagha is our first batch LLB graduate. She joined us in 2009 and studied at Jindal Global Law School from 2009 to 2012. She actually got her degree in our first convocation in 2012. And then, of course, she went to University of Toronto, did a master's in law, then spent quite some time in Canada, became a member of the Canadian Bar and the Ontario Bar, presently working in a leading Canadian law firm. I read about Fasken, a firm with some 800 lawyers, a truly international global law firm. Our other panelist is Teresa Puttumana. Teresa is 2011-14 batch LLB graduate. She came to us after completing a BCom honors degree from one of the leading colleges in Kerala and joined the LLB 3-year program in 2011-14 batch. I had an opportunity to teach her class also. I remember, I've been how sincere a student you were, Teresa, but I did not imagine that time that you are going to join White & Case London and working there for 5 years. You will be moving to another law firm, again, an international law firm headquartered in Zurich with offices in Geneva and London. And I'm so proud of you, Teresa. Now, another two very special panelists and speakers for this session, Tahira and Ankit, both are our LLB 3-year students. Both are in the 2019-22 batch. Both will be graduating next year. But I must say, Tahira is one batch senior to Ankit in BA Global Affairs program, but I know. And both are students of Jindal School of International Affairs, where they studied a 3-year undergraduate degree, a BA honors in global affairs, what we call for our international relations program, a very unique undergraduate degree. And then they chose to study law. So Tahira has been a teaching assistant to the Dean, Professor Sriram Chalia, and worked in international relations and international law field. Ankit is our youngest panelist in this. Ankit has done remarkable work since he joined the law school. I don't have much idea about what he did in the School of International Affairs, but after joining the LLB 3-year degree program, I could see Ankit setting up the Jindal Society of International Law. Ankit bringing a lot of scholars, professors, international law, jurists, judges from international tribunals, a lot of them to his forum and organize a lot of lectures, seminars, and contributing in his own way to the development of international law scholarship in the country. So welcome, Ankit. Welcome, Taira. It's such a pleasure. All of you are there, and I am absolutely delighted to be moderating this session, all led by our alumni and our students. And there could nothing be more pride moment for a teacher or a professor to see that his or her students are actually doing better and brighter than us. And certainly every student should be better than their fathers and uncles and as well as their professors. So with these words, I will like to invite the first panelist, Ms. Anaga Nandkumaran, to share her views about this event and this colloquium. We will continue in future too, but welcome Anga to become the first speaker of this colloquium, and in a way of this series, the series of webinars, colloquiums, seminars, workshops, which we intend to do in future. Welcome Anga, over to you.
Good evening, and Professor Mishra, thank you very much for the very kind introduction. It's quite surreal, I must say, for me to be here and participate in an event hosted by Jindal after almost close to a decade. I was among the first batch of the 3 LLB students to graduate from Jindal. Interestingly, despite doing physics, chemistry, math, and computer science up until grade 12, I was quite determined to join something that was not more mainstream, and journalism was my initial choice. My father, however, seeded the initial thought of me going to law school. I was dabbling with both ideas of going to law school or doing journalism, listed out my pros and cons, and law appeared to be the more apt choice, a choice that I'm glad I made to this day. While at Jindal, I had an exhilarating experience. We had excellent faculty, resources, and exposure, and I owe a great deal to them. I can't think of a time when I didn't get enough help to realize what I wanted to achieve or what I wanted to do. I will admit, though, that it did require a lot of work, time, energy, and patience for sure. While at law school, I enjoyed research and writing a lot. And some of the highlights outside of coursework at Jindal were where I was a research assistant with the Center for Health Law, Ethics and Technology under Professor Jain. We presented an empirical study and organized a workshop on the effective implementation of tobacco law controls in Haryana. I was also the Chief Placement Coordinator of the Career Development and Placement Division. Again, I worked with Professor Jain. A friend of mine and I presented a paper in the second Jindal Student Research Colloquium. It was a critique of the Vodafone case at that point, which was the talk of the town, and what its impact was on cross-border M&A. And I knew from the very beginning at law school that I'd like to practice corporate law. I certainly attribute that to my fascination for the financial markets that I developed very early on. I furthered my interest in the area, and I opted for courses in law school like corporate law, advanced corporate law, competition law, taxation, and global financial markets. I interned at 4 national law firms in different cities in India and 1 international law firm in Singapore. I must tell you that my first thought at each of these places was that they were nothing like what you read in John Grisham's books. While interning, I was picky about the areas I did my rotations in, which I'm glad about in hindsight. They were capital markets, intellectual property, and general corporate law. I'd always ensure that I was the one who got there before time. So I got dibs on the most interesting files. I stayed on until after most other interns left. I sure had a lot of fun. I made some great friends along the way. But I'd make use of every opportunity I'd get to get a better grasp of the work environment and learn about the associates and partners who are willing to mentor young resources and were patient enough to run through the specifics of a deal with you. I'd then try and work with them, develop a rapport, and then build my network and stay in touch with them. So I ensured that I sustained all of these relationships through law school up until the time when I was working and until this day. In the summer of 2012, when I was in my final year at law school, I landed a job, and I also had the opportunity to attend the intensive course on health and human rights at the Harvard School of Public Health right after I was back from Boston. And unlike a lot of students who graduate from law school, I did not start off at a law firm or litigating. I began in-house. I was offered a legal counsel position at a Fortune 200 information technology company called Cognizant Technology Solutions. I was excited about the prospect of being back home in Chennai and traveling just a measly 20 kilometers to get to work every day. At the time I joined the legal team, it was expanding a great deal, and they were on to great new ventures. So I could seize as many opportunities as I wanted to. So over the 4 years that I was there at Cognizant, a lot of my time went into working on technology law transactions, primarily in North America and the Asia Pacific regions. I worked on a lot of drafts, and I negotiated a lot of commercial contracts for multi-million-dollar deals. I was also on the Prevention for Sexual Harassment Committee, where I investigated complaints and drew out various courses of action. So at all times, I wore two hats, one of a lawyer and the other of a business person. And a deep understanding and interest on the business side of things ensured that my legal advice was always practical and commercially viable. In the 5th year, I was offered an excellent position at Shardul Amachand Mangaldas, a national law firm in India. In addition to working on technology and corporate commercial transactions, I was tasked with helping them set up an office with zero book. So I spent a little over than 2 years there, but I learned so much that I feel like I spent an entire lifetime at Amachand. From targeting clients, attending conferences, presenting on exciting topics like blockchain and digital assets, winning clients, working on transactions, sustaining client relationships, billing clients, and building book, I learned how to build, run, and sustain a business while still juggling the practice of law. For several reasons, in fact, personal and professional, I then moved to Toronto to pursue my Master's of Law at the University of Toronto. And it was a sea change in terms of the people I met, but the method of discourse and discussion was just like it was at Jindal. Apart from completing some Canadian law courses, the areas I chose to focus on for my coursework and research were privacy and cybersecurity, banking and finance, global mergers and acquisitions, securities law, and blockchain and digital assets. And while pursuing my master's, and a little after I completed my requirements to be called to the bar here in Ontario, I worked in-house briefly, and I now practice technology and corporate commercial law at a pan-Canadian law firm called Fasken Martineau, DeMol and LLP here in Toronto. That's pretty much been my academic and professional journey until date.
Let me start before I talk about my experience. I'll start by saying there's no right or wrong way to becoming an arbitration lawyer or an international lawyer anywhere in the world, because everyone has their own journey, their own experiences. Annika's experience is very different from mine, and same with Tyra and Ankit. So I'll just start with that and say, be open-minded. And I think my experience will show you why it is important to be open-minded as well. So when I started, after my 12th grade, I decided to do BCom because I hadn't decided what career path I want to take as an 18-year-old at that stage. I loved accounting, I loved economics, capital markets, all these courses. And when I was studying, I studied business law, and I was very interested in that, and I wanted to explore that opportunity. And I spoke to my professor, Sajoysa, at my BCom college, and I said, I want to do business law and to do a degree in business, a master's in business law. And he encouraged me to apply for a proper law degree. And he's the one who recommended Jindal Global Law School. I didn't even know about that because it was very new at that stage. And I decided to apply for this because he said, I told him, I want to have an international experience. I want to work abroad. I want to do more corporate. I don't want to necessarily do litigation. So he said, okay, this seems like a really good opportunity. It's very new. They seem to have a lot of connections and a lot of opportunities for law students to at least try out these opportunities. So I decided to apply. And in my first year, I remember Anaga was in the internship committee. I forgot the name, so you were in charge of. And I remember thinking, oh my God, and Anaga was talking about White and Case, and there were other students talking about White and Case and Jindal having an MOU with each other where every year they would send 2 students for summer internship. So in my first year, I said, okay, I definitely want to be a corporate lawyer. The White and Case is where I want to intern and have it on my CV. So I'm going to apply. And in my first year, I got rejected because they said, what's there on your CV? You need to show more things on your CV to get this opportunity. So in the first year, my focus was then to do as many experience, as many, I remember doing, applying with, I think working with James Nadapara on his Center for Investment Treaty or Trade Policy, and then with Professor Y.S.R. Murthy on human rights, just exploring all the opportunities that's there, and also doing advanced corporate law course that LLM students were taking in my first year, because I'm like, I want to show on my CV that I'm definitely interested in this. And in my second year, I applied for the internship, got the internship. And when I was there, they encouraged me to apply for the vacation scheme. So in the UK, most big law firms have vacation schemes. That's a 2-week or 3-week internship. But at the end of the internship, they will interview you. And then you can, once you've cleared it, you'll get a training contract offer. So by then, what you have to do is it's usually the training contract offer is given 2 years in advance. So for me, I had to wait for 2 years before I can start my training contract. So I decided to study the law conversion courses in London during that time. And I trained at White and Case. And again, when I started, I was sure I wanted to be a transaction lawyer. There was nothing else I could have even thought about at that stage. I did banking, I did capital markets, like 6 months each. And I did disputes. And when I did disputes, I realized, oh, actually, this is what I want to do long-term in my career. And I decided to qualify into the disputes department. And it's one of the best international arbitration department in the world. And I got the opportunity to do a lot of cross-border transactions, especially construction disputes. And I worked as an associate there for 3 years. And again, thinking about or reflecting on my experience so far, I realized I want to do more diverse work and more, maybe moving to a smaller firm where I can get bigger opportunities, better client exposure. And that's how I decided to move to Llm, which is one of the leading Swiss law firms, with a wonderful team, very talented, excellent team. And I just started 2 weeks ago, and I'm excited with that opportunity. So I think I'll stop there for now, and I'll talk more about qualifying into the UK later on. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Professor Mishra. So my name is Tahira, and I'm currently in my 3rd year of LLB. I think Anaga and Teresa's words are extremely helpful even for me, and I wouldn't be able to share with you from their experienced point of views, but I would love to share whatever experience I've had so far in my short career. So just like Ankit, I started with an undergraduate degree in global affairs, which is basically the study of international relations. So now IR is a very broad discipline, and you can direct it in a lot of ways, like getting a regional specialization and so on. But I think the IR degree I ended up with through my work experience and electives was developing transferable skills of analysis. So in terms of work experience, I got the opportunity to interview the Tibetan Prime Minister in exile. I worked on a lot of policy issues. I also got to work on 2 books of foreign policy under the Dean of JSIA, Dr. Sriram Cholia, which was a great learning experience. I was also subcontracted by a law firm during my undergraduate degree for a project with the World Bank. The work was IR based, but at the same time, I drew first blood of law, and that is when I really started thinking about doing an LLB. Well, that and also the fact that I already had a flavor of JGLS through cross electives, and I knew that this could be a great turn in my career. So I think rather than it being a strategic decision, my undergraduate degree itself brought me to pursue law. So when I started my LLB, even though I didn't have it all figured out in the beginning, I knew I wanted to parlay my undergraduate knowledge to law, not because I felt that it would be a waste, but just because I recognized the value of it. So during my LLB, I took some positions of responsibility, like I became the student academic committee representative, and I'm also the board member of the Jindal Society of International Law. I discovered during my LLB that law is not limited to courts. I know that sounds funny at this stage, but initially I didn't know to what extent law is there, right? So, and I really focused on how my IR knowledge could really be applied. I think I tried to develop skills of applying a legal understanding in the national and international context. So for me, even though I had great mentors in arbitration and litigation, I was inclined towards corporate law because it did complement my skill set, and also because transactions are often cross-border. And also in corporate law, I feel like as in IR, when you're analyzing facts and events to predict risks or situations or actions of countries, in corporate law as well, you have to attempt this forward-looking thinking. So when we talk about international lawyers, I am not one, not now, as of now anyway, but I've been placed at Trilegal through the OCS's 0-day process in my second year. The thing that attracted me to Trilegal the most is not only that it is a tier 1 firm at the end of the day, but also the kind of international clients it has, which I think would really allow me to do the sort of work I want to do eventually, which is to become a cross-border transactional lawyer. So in a nutshell, my goal was to bridge my undergrad degree with my graduate studies. And since I believe I would be able to do so working as a corporate lawyer at Trilegal, I accepted the offer there. But I also realized that everyone's undergraduate degrees may not pave a clear path and help them realize what they want to do. So moving away from my specific experience, I would love to share whatever little I know. I think since 3 years can get away very fast while doing an LLB, it is important to set a goal after maybe a year through your LLB, but because then you have enough to structure your studies. For example, in hindsight, I would have taken more corporate law electives from my second year onwards. So your goal may be placement through campus and LLM, litigation work, and so on. But if your goal is placements, then work experience becomes a really important factor. I think I've really taken advantage of online internships, which I think will be there for a while because of the pandemic. And I was actually interning since July 2020 up till 2 months ago. So I would like to speak a little bit on the controversial placement bias question that LLB students often have. So now I realize that everyone has different experiences, but just from my experience, I think LLB students have lesser internship time, which might come off as disadvantages. So before joining law school or early on, when you start with your LLB, you should do your homework. Since this is a webinar about how to become an international lawyer, I can give you examples of some fields which I think has a lot of cross-border transactional work. There are mergers and acquisitions, outbound and inbound transactions in private equity, international taxation, etc. If you're thinking about transnational litigation, then you would need to think about your degree, and that becomes an important factor. But then there is international arbitration, World Trade Organization, dispute settlements, then there's international maritime law as well. So if you're really interested in transnational litigation, then apart from law firms, you can also intern with independent practitioners like senior advocates who get these cases on a daily basis. But I think in terms of work experience, if you apply from the start, that is your first year, and gradually understand what fields you enjoy and have 2-3 internships in that field, it would really give you an advantage. But if your heart is set on something specific that doesn't have a lot of internship possibilities and otherwise, you also don't have to get a placement through OCS as a goal. I mean, there is an LLM, which is a great option. For instance, if you're interested in maritime law, then and I think an LLM is essential. So one must think on those lines regarding our goals according to the subject matter that we're interested in. I also think with regards to placements, some LLB students have an advantage in terms of their undergraduate degree. If you can show a link to your work in your undergrad, that immediately differentiates you from the 5-year BA LLB kids. So be it political science, business, economics, and so on. I think law is extremely vast and interdisciplinary. I think my use of my undergraduate skills in my internships is also what set me apart during my internships. I can give you an example. I was asked to research on a material adverse effect clause during COVID-19 in a merger and an acquisition, where I was able to look at different case studies like LVMH Tiffany or Bed Bath and Beyond and 1800flowers.com and make a buyer's guide in mergers and acquisitions. So if you want to be involved in cross-border corporate law, and IR degree is of course not necessary, but you can also pick up these skills by reading online. I regularly read the New York Times Deal Book for International Transactions, which gives you knowledge about contemporary international transactions, and it really helps you understand the motive of commercial actors. So, for example, if I would read the news like the Walmart and Flipkart deal, my mind would immediately go to how it was structured. Like, why did Flipkart go private in Singapore and what advantage would it have in the acquisition transaction? So, eventually, you find that 70% of corporate law is based on understanding these trends and how to attempt forward-looking thinking in structuring transactions. And then the rest of the 30% is rules and regulations. For example, in this field, one must know SEBI's rules and regulations. All in all, I think a 3+3 law degree is a great choice. In fact, it can be advantageous. And I hope I have been able to show you that. Also, an LLB was always meant to be a postgraduate degree. And there are many opportunities during LLB, such as placements, as you can see by my example, or even after LLB, as you can see by Anaga and Teresa's example. So I think I've put on a twist on the theme of how to become an international lawyer since I'm in my 3rd year currently. But I hope what you take away from this is that there is no one way of becoming an international lawyer, and it always has to be based on your interests and not the other way around. And for an LLB at Jindal, I think one must keep our eyes and ears open because there are so many opportunities, whether it is being involved in societies, webinars, speaking to faculty, and so on. So the one thing that I would change in hindsight would be to take advantage of the language centers at Jindal, be it Mandarin, French, or Spanish. So yes, so that's it from my end. If anybody anytime wants to speak to me, they can always contact me. Over to you, Professor. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for organizing this. What started as a telephonic conversation with you has blossomed into something quite extraordinary. My Christian brothers in St. John's High School introduced me to the British monarchy and its history. Over there I read about Henry VIII. Now I feel like Henry VIII's 6th wife. I know what is expected of me, but I don't know how to do it differently. But on a more serious note, I feel like what Justice Krishna Iyer would say as a pedestrian lawyer. And I think it sort of represents what Jindal has taught me. I reserve my comments on the society for questions, but what I can say to start off with, it is a quorum of thought-provoking discussions which we wanted to start. This was a brainchild which I shared with Tahira, who readily jumped on this idea. And like Anaga, I spent a lot of time in the registrar's office. This was because the registrar's office was also the Center for Human Rights Studies. And in the conference room, there was a photograph, there was a quote by Gandhi. And this quote was that, learn as if you were to die tomorrow, and live as if you were to die tomorrow, and learn as if you were to live forever. And that somehow sort of stayed with me ever since my studies. I had to wait for a long period of time because my turn to be given instructions for my internship, for my research assistantship at the center came in the end. Because I was only the only student who was not a law student, but was interested to study human rights in not only an Indian context, but also in an international context. In my bachelor studies, I also traveled quite a lot. And traveling quite a lot introduced me to one place which is very close to our Vice Chancellor. This is Oxford. And at Oxford, I realized something quite extraordinary, because Oxford is a place which has a very deep paradox. This paradox is it's immersed in its history. It's an 800-year institute, and with being pioneers and stakeholders in the future of mankind simultaneously. So dipped in history, yet so forward-looking that it's a pioneer in the field of every study. This is something which I found quite insightful. And traveling abroad, studying under professors to which the university represented me, often as the youngest student, I realized that it's more than just about being interested or being interesting. I think it's more important to also learn and not only speak. And that's what teachings of professors at this university taught me. During my undergraduate studies, I studied not only under professors of my school, I also jumped over to the government policy school, and sometimes I was also found in the classes of liberal arts students, because I thought only that education knowledge lies everywhere. For me, it wasn't about studying only international history from the perspective of wars, but also studying it through architecture or also through music. So this is something which has perhaps been most important to me, is that studying and learning from different avenues. And during my studies as a bachelor student, I worked very closely with late Dr. Professor Nigan Pao Kipkin. I still remember his voice, which rings in my ears every now and then. He used to guide us on not only what to write on, but how to write on. His teachings will always be very close to me. We unfortunately lost him very recently, but his teachings, his writings, and his research center will always be very close to me for what he taught me and for what he made me in terms of what I can do as a student of law, and also of studying international relations from a very precise, accurate, and rigorous manner. Because I think those are the hallmarks of studying law. With those words, I now hand it back to Professor Mishra, but I do feel I've left his question unanswered. So can you just ask the question again? I'll address it more precisely.
So thank you so much, Ankit. I will coming to the question answer session, because we have started receiving a lot of questions. And I must tell all of you that our session is not just being viewed by our webinar attendees who are in the Zoom session itself, some 170 of them, but it's being broadcast on the official YouTube channel of OP Jindal Global University and official Facebook account as well. So a lot of people are watching directly on YouTube and Facebook. More importantly, I can see a lot of questions coming up from the audience. Some are targeted to the panelists. For Teresa, there is a question. For Anagha, there is a question. There are a few questions which are for all the panelists. So I would like to first take Anagha, who, there is a very unique question for her. That's about, you mentioned about choosing between journalism and law, how you decided about or zeroed on the law option. Then there is also a question which particularly deals with Canada. Hrishikesh has asked this question. Hrishikesh asked, he's a final year BBA LLB honors student who wants to settle in Canada. So what is the procedure? What should be his roadmap? Whether should he aim for an LLM program in Canada or through NCA, or how to get opportunities in Canadian law firms and companies. So I want you to throw some light on this, legal profession and legal practice in Canada, and how an Indian law graduate can aspire for that. But before that, also how you took that call about choosing between journalism and law. Over to you.
Sure, thank you very much. So in terms of how I chose journalism over law, As I mentioned earlier, I drew out my list of pros and cons. I read up a fair bit. I spoke to quite a few people. I wrote to quite a few people who are journalists, who are also lawyers. I wasn't interested in really becoming a litigating lawyer. So with all the resources that I could essentially pool, I drew out my list of pros and cons. So when you're doing your list of pros and cons, I think it's very important that you focus on what your areas of interest are. What do you really want to do? What do you want to study or research on, for instance, or even work? Is there a particular place you'd like to work at? And a location, for instance, can be a preference for you. It was definitely a preference for me and several others I knew who were part of my batch and who joined Jindal subsequently. I think your list of pros and cons will really help for anything at all. Even when I'm moving jobs, even now, I do my list of pros and cons, and that's something that can really help you along the way. I must also mention that even if there's an area of interest that you have to research in, for instance, even if it's to do with science and technology, if you're able to sort of have that overlap with your interest in law in some manner or the other, that's something you'll be able to still pursue. Because I remember I had a lot of classmates who had engineering degrees before they decided to come on board and do their LLB. A lot of them had degrees in economics, in commerce, like Teresa did. So it was a wide range of interests that I had, or rather my classmates had while at Jindal. So I think your list of pros and cons is your way to go, and pool in your resources. I'll be happy to, help you brainstorm if you'd like. Feel free to drop me a note on LinkedIn. I can do that. So that was to answer the first question, Professor Mishra. The second is not just to answer Hrishikesh's question, but also in general, I can tell you about the journey to becoming a lawyer in Toronto and what it really takes. It took me close to 2 years to do that. So before I joined and I moved to Toronto and I applied for my LLM, I had to get an assessment of my law degree done. And the courses I completed while at law school, it's done by the National Committee on Accreditation. They are a wing of the Federation of Law Societies of Canada. So they essentially assess the qualifications of foreign trained lawyers globally, and they mandate a set of exams for you to complete depending on your qualifications. So I was required to complete 5 compulsory courses. It was in Foundations of Canadian Law, Constitutional Law, Criminal Law, Administrative Law, and Professional Ethics. And based on how you fared in other subjects while at your law school during your undergrad, you'd also be required to complete additional set of exams in other subjects. Like, for instance, I know people who had to write papers in torts or business law. Now, upon passing these exams, which are called the NCA exams, I was given a certificate of qualification. Now, this certificate was required for me to then enroll with the Law Society of Ontario as a lawyer licensing candidate. Once I was enrolled, I then had to prepare for my solicitor and barrister licensing exams. The year I wrote the exams, which was just before COVID hit and during COVID hit, during COVID, we were given about 2,000 pages of study material in the 3rd week of April. We had the first exam, which was the barristers, was 6 weeks after we got the study material. And the barristers exam was broken into 5 Canadian law subjects, which were civil litigation, family law, criminal law, public law, and professional ethics. And the solicitor exam was 2 weeks after the barristers. So we essentially had 8 weeks to study for the solicitor exams. And that consisted of 4 subject areas. That would be business law, real estate law, wills and estates, and professional ethics. Now, each of the barristers and solicitor exams ran for 7 hours, and we were on a timer throughout. We got an hour's break in the middle. I had approximately 90 seconds per question. They were only multiple choice questions, but it also included hypotheticals, which could be page-long hypotheticals, which quizzed your understanding of a particular subject area. So you're not required, however, to do both exams in the same sitting. So it's an option that several people take. So it's a little less stressful, so you can break down the chunks of material for your study and prep. I know it sounds very daunting, the process, but if you persevere, it's not insurmountable. Now, in addition to successfully completing these exams, the Law Society requires you to complete a 10-month articling or an 8-month law practice program stint. Now, this is very similar to what chartered accountants do back in India, where they have to do an articling stint where they work under a professional, a CA professional. So essentially during this time, you're assessed on all your skills that you're required to have as a lawyer. And every student who goes to law school here in Ontario, in Canada, completes this mandatory requirement. However, several candidates who are foreign qualified and who have prior legal experience from a different jurisdiction, they choose to request for a waiver of this requirement. I chose not to request for a waiver. I chose to study for an extra 8 months. And I felt this will help me better integrate with the legal market here, with the system here, as I continue to expand my network. Now, during the latter 4 months of the law practice program, I worked at a company on corporate commercial matters in my capacity as a lawyer licensing candidate. And once I completed the LPP, I was called to the Ontario Bar as a solicitor and barrister. So it was the culmination and coming together of all these different exams that you have to do, including your articling or your law practice program stint, where you work under somebody who's called your principal lawyer. It's the coming together of all of this in a little less than 2 years that makes you a lawyer here. Now, they took into account my prior transactional experience that cut across various common law jurisdictions. And so I was offered a position at the same company as a corporate commercial lawyer. And shortly thereafter, I now moved to private practice, and I practice at the law firm called Faskin, and I do technology and corporate commercial matters.
So that's brilliant, Anga. But what I could infer is a lot of hard work, and I'm so proud of you. You went through this journey. It's always comparatively easier to choose a path of litigating in a court near your home, or even to say take a judicial service exam and become a judicial officer, or to do masters and PhD, like people in academia like us and teach, but going to in a way a foreign territory and then first attaining the qualification. I'm sure Teresa had same experience in London, in the UK, and I'm coming to her. There are some interesting questions for Teresa. So, but it's so good to hear from you, Anga. So, Teresa, there are a few questions. Like the first question of this webinar, Angela asked for you, what were some roadblocks you faced in your international career in moving to London and becoming a qualified lawyer there? There is another question from an anonymous attendee, and he or she has asked this question, that what were your billable hours at White & Case? Of course, you are not required to answer every question, the confidentiality and all, but you can see how our young people, many of the people who are attending this webinar are young students of law and even law aspirants. And some of the parents and actually even lawyers are attending it. One of the law professor had just sent me a WhatsApp message that I am loving to see your young graduates and students. So a lot of people are attending it, but this question is a good question when a student asks which newspaper you read regularly for commercial awareness which you have, which is good for your profession. So these 2-3 questions were for you. There are some common questions which we will be taking up. So over to you, Teresa.
Thank you. I think, I don't know which question to answer first. Let me just start with the billable hours. I think we can all agree that law, especially a career in law firm, a big law firm, it's not going to be a 9 to 6 job most of the time. because I think with any, especially when there's a filing or a hearing, it takes a lot of work, a lot of effort that need to be put in to get the draft or the final submission that is, meets the client's requirements and also something the tribunal would be happy with. So I would say the hours were long, but it's about if you're doing work in an area that you're passionate about, you're going to enjoy that time. If you're working in a great team that motivates you, encourages you, you are going to enjoy that time. And you're not going to think about, oh my God, I have to work these hours. It's more about, I'm doing such an exciting work. I want to do my best. So I would answer it that way. Regarding the first question, I think the roadblocks that I felt, I'm just looking at, is that the question? Okay. So when I started thinking about a career, I didn't have many, because we were one of the earlier batches. So there weren't people who've already done it. So that was one of the most challenging aspect of having to do all the research by myself. A lot of times there were people who were, for instance, Vaiji Raghunathan, she's my mentor and my corporate law professor, who she became my mentor because she was there, who would share her experience with me. And I would go and sit with her after class and ask questions and ask, like, see, how do I want to work abroad, but I don't know what I should be doing. And one thing I learned from her was she had a huge focus on getting the basics right, making sure your analytical skills are great, your technical knowledge is great, because these are very key aspects when you move, especially in the UK. I feel more than having a lot of things on your CV, like moot court competitions, debating, at the end of the day, you should be able to show that you have great analytical skills. And that Ankit talked about, Anaga talked about, it doesn't come easy. You have to read a lot. You have to understand, like, dig deeper. It doesn't, I think Ankit was saying he would attend classes from different courses. It doesn't have to be just law, just to understand what's actually happening. And regarding the newspapers that I read, what I think I did it the other way around. I would read Financial Times, but I would find it sometimes difficult just to focus on what I should be reading. So when I decided I want to apply for a training contract, what I would do was go into White & Case's website, look at their press releases and see what kind of matters are they doing, what kind of matters are they publishing, and then reading more into it, researching on it. What is this? And if it's relating to some stock market in China, I would read more about it. And I would read a lot of law firms publish a lot of articles for their clients, client alerts, thought leadership. These are all great things you can read to understand how businesses work. And moving back to the moot court competitions thing, I think I want to stress this. Moot court competitions are great. Debating, it's a great opportunity for you to work on your advocacy skills. But at least in the UK, what I found that the importance placed on it was less, because it could be because in India, once you graduate, you are a litigator. You can go and argue before the court. In the UK, it's quite different. You either become a barrister or a solicitor. And I'm a solicitor. And as a solicitor, you don't really start arguing from day one. You get these opportunities further down the line. So what they look at in your CV when you're applying for jobs is, it's more than the academics. Are you an all-rounder? Do you have interest outside law? And a huge number of CVs I've noticed have volunteering experiences, clinical experiences. I think that's why I would really encourage people to do volunteering, not because you have it on your CV, but there must be areas that you would find interesting. There's so many things you can do volunteering and go. And so that in your CV, during your interview, you can talk about it. You're adding value. You're talking about something you're passionate about, and it would make you stand out of, in the interview process as well, rather than just focusing on everyone thinks I should do moot court competition, so I'm going to just do that. No, you should just think about what works for me. What is my career goals? What do I want to do? And go for that. And sports, I think sports is also something you can, because there's a lot of discipline involved in it. So there are so many aspects like that. And I want to just conclude by talking about LLM program, because this is one misconception a lot of people have when they move to the UK. If you're coming to the UK to do LLM because you want to specialize in an area, because you're interested in it, that's great. But if your focus is purely that you want to work as a lawyer in the UK, I would say that's not necessarily the right approach. Your effort should start in law school, because law firms in the UK give training contracts 2 years in advance. Because in the UK, if you want to be a lawyer, even for law students here, after your law degree, you have to do a 2-year training contract. And for foreign lawyers, you have to do the SQE equivalent, a course, an exam in order to qualify. So it's not directly right after, like in India, where you give the exams, you pass the bar, and then you start. So knowing that it starts 2 years in advance, one thing you have to know is then, if you're in a 3-year program, you have to be aware from your first year that, okay, I need to be applying for this job in my second year. Or if you're in your 5-year program, I have to apply it in my 3rd year or at the beginning of 4th year. So your CV should be built within that period of time as well, to make sure you apply it on time. So when you apply it during the law firms, like I think Professor Anand, and I agree with it, Alan and Overy, Clifford Chance, these law firms come to India and recruit students. And a lot of people miss out on these opportunities because they don't realize that they can apply beforehand. And vacation scheme, one of the students asked, is vacation scheme the best way to go? I'm not going to, these are my personal opinions. I think it's one of the best ways to get a training contract offer, because they get to see you for 2 weeks interning with them, and they're actually assessing you throughout. And then the job interview is so much simpler then. So all in all, I would say, if your aim is to qualify in the UK, start in your law school, do all and it doesn't have to be just corporate law. And also some people have a misconception that if you're working abroad, that means you're doing public international law or investment treaty. It's not necessarily that. There's corporate law, there's banking, everything you do in India, you can do abroad. It's just that the cross-border aspect, it would be much bigger jurisdiction, many jurisdictions involved, people from all around the world. I've worked with people from around the world and interacting. So it's all, those are the things you have to be aware of. And LLM is good, but if that's your whole goal, then I would suggest still apply for the training contract before you start your LLM, so that when you're doing your LLM, you're just learning more about in your interest area. Over to you, Professor.
So I just wanted to add to that. So let me just share what I do as a regular practice. I mean, I find journals to be slightly laborious. So I read blogs. I read blogs written by professional academics and even solicitors and barristers. See, my practice area is, or at least ought to be, public international law. Now, public international law is a sphere by its very nature gives professors and academicians a very high pedestal. So professors write and share a lot of their thoughts on issues of public international law. These 2,000, 2,500 word, 3,000 word articles on international law blogs are extremely useful. And I read them to gather and synthesize my own ideas. One of these ideas which I got, and I presented a paper again as one of the youngest speakers in the Indian Society of International Law conference, was on international state responsibility. Now, this incidentally also became the moot point of the JGLS moot competition. So you get ideas and you synthesize them. Another idea I got was to write on the decorative arts inside the Peace Palace. Now, these ideas are synthesized inside me because of the vast array of professors in Jindal. I have an idea, then I have the ability to share it with not only a professor of international law or someone who's represented in India, who's represented India in the Peace Palace, but also with a professor of arts and architecture who can talk about the object and the object's history inside the palace. Now, something which was shared and has started very recently is the BA Legal Studies program. I'll just take a minute on that because I see a question on that. Now, as students of the university, this was shared with us slightly before. When this email came, I was in a conversation with my father. I told my father, why wasn't this shared when I was joining Jindal? Because it seems to be the absolutely perfect opportunity. You get introduced to the subject of law from a different perspective on which you can build upon. For me and Taira, we studied it from a different perspective, which shaped our thought process. But imagine if you want to get into litigation, if you want to be the next Salve, or if you want to be the next Subramaniam. You'll get the groundings from the absolute echelons. You'll get this grounding from the Bakshis, from the chimneys, from the baby pandits, which is what the university can do to you. You can study the history of the course, you can study the legislations, you can study world process and world constitutions and also world codes. You can also study the constitution from a different perspective. I had 1 year on constitution, but you can invest 2 to 3 years on the constitution. Recently, we had a very famous speaker speaking on environmental law, but I was able to connect environmental law to Glanvine Williams because our speaker was American, and to Glanville Williams because Glanville Williams played an instrumental role in the chronicalization of the Indian Constitution, on which then Professor Bakshi wrote an article, a book review, which perhaps catapulted him into stardom in the academy. So these are connections which you'll be able to draw. You'll be able to draw these connections through the introductions you get to law through the university. Law school is only going to give you an introduction. It's not going to make you an Anaga or a Teresa. That will happen with how you proceed with whatever you are introduced to.
Wonderful. It's a very nice input. I truly appreciate that. And of course, to become an accomplished, or I will say a good international lawyer, having a career in a leading international law firm, is certainly not an easy path. There are even easy, actually law itself is not an easy path. I consider law to be the most challenging careers and profession in the world. And even if lawyers worked as freedom fighters for the country, the spirit of being a lawyer was always there. I mean, imagine Mahatma Gandhi or Pandit Nehru or, all those accomplished lawyers, the best lawyers of this country fought the freedom struggle for us, fought that battle with the, with the, I will say, empire, which was like the, it was almost the entire world was under them. And even if you look at the later time period, see emergency, 1975 to 77, the people who were in a way leading India during the emergency, if you look at their profiles, majority of them will find lawyers. Many of them later on became, part of the union cabinet and the union government later. But lawyers are, I will say, law is leadership. Law teaches leadership, and certainly not just in India, around the world, you will see the leaders in the society, in polity, in economy, even in trade and business. Even many Fortune 500 CEOs are JD graduates, are law graduates in the US, Canada, or around the world. So now there is a question for Tahira. That's a question from one of our students, Harshit Jain. Harshit says, I owe a debt of gratitude to everyone. I am thankful to be a part of JGU. Harshit, we are proud to have you as a student. You have earned it. Tahira Somal is someone to whom I can relate. When we look at natural law, environmental laws, national security, and other subjects, what are the varied career opportunities? So this may be a tough question for you, Tahira, because you have landed up a job. I mean, I should congratulate you first in Tri-Legal, which is a corporate law firm. And Harshit is asking a question about careers in environment, national security, and other subjects. So please go ahead. Over to you.
Just from the top of my head, I think there are many opportunities within these fields. I don't know what you mean by natural law, but within environmental law, if you look at international environmental law, it would fall under international public law. And within India, litigation is one option in environmental law. And for law firms, I think there is a lot of scope in projects and energy. I don't know if that falls in your area of interest, but you can definitely look it up. I think Trilegal has a fantastic practice in this area, and stretching national security a little, you can look up aviation law and maritime law maybe. And as I said, I don't have much knowledge on these specific areas since it's not my area of expertise, but I'm sure a simple search can help you. And otherwise, you can always send me an email and I can talk to you later.
Wonderful, Taira. Actually, there is a question that how we can reach out to these panelists after this webinar. So I think the best way is to find you maybe on LinkedIn or sending an email to you, or even they can send an email to me at my official ID. My office will forward that to you. There are a few interesting questions, but our time is going to be up. And certainly we will like to take few more before, winding up the session. But Mr. K. Pani is asking about how do we impanel with the WTO, OECD, UNESCO, International Human Rights Commission, and all, whether JGU has created any information library for this. I can take up this question, but certainly I like your views. If from your experience, Teresa and Anga, of working with the Center for International Trade and Economic Laws, led by Professor James Nedumpara, my very good friend. In trade law organizations like WTO or, other international organizations, how our university had, through the Office of Career Services and otherwise also through its professors, roped into various internship programs. So I would like two of you to share your experiences, and then we will take a few more questions. Yeah, over to you, Anga, Teresa. One of you can answer. Those who are in trade law and international internships.
Sure. So Professor James was an excellent resource for all of us, and he had a lot of experience working on international trade matters. So that was great for us. I know that the library at Jindal as well pulls in a lot of resources. Just apart from your professors, you also have your research assistants. You have the library in itself, which has a wide range of resources that you can really make use of, where you can subscribe to a lot of these journals. They have a lot of subscriptions right there for you to access on the computers in the library. So that is one thing you can make use of. I think what is also important is that you have, you go through the profiles of the different people who are impaneled as full-time and part-time faculty at Jindal. And I know for a fact that they're all very welcoming. All you need to do is just drop them a note. And they'll be more than happy to have a chat with you and sort of guide you through the entire process of becoming a lawyer in a specialized area of your interest. For instance, I see this question about, pursuing a career in maritime law. I'm not a maritime lawyer and I haven't practiced in the area, but I'm aware of many independent practitioners in India, in Canada, and all over the world, and also law firms that specialize in this area of law. There's also a lot of, cross-border elements to this area of law. So it'll definitely be very exciting, but it's a very niche area. So you'll still be required to do your basics, get your basics right, whether it's in contracts or whether it's generally in disputes and all of that. Get your basics in order, but ensure that you keep your interests, as in you stay on with your interest. You read, you subscribe to journals, or research on firms that issue press releases. You can subscribe to, just subscribe to their newsletters And if you find it, I see somebody has mentioned that they find it very hard to read a lot of content without giving them a migraine. I think it's quite hard for everybody, but when you subscribe to a lot of these publications and newsletters, what happens is that they send you snippets of, it'll just be quick 4 or 5 lines about what the article talks about or what the recent case law addressed. And if that intrigues you and that interests you, then that's something you definitely want to give it a read. And once you start reading an area that you're really interested in, I'm sure the migraine won't really affect you.
Yeah, I think even Google Alerts, you can actually have alerts where you can decide in Financial Times and other what kind of topics you're mostly interested in. And I'm someone who I'm not an avid reader. Say like I like to read very focused. Like if I'm interested in a subject, I would read so much about it, but I need it to be more focused. So I think if you're subscribing to everything, then it's just too much. Like Annika said, it's about even looking into like if it's law firms or institutions, if there are, even they usually have alerts within their website, which you can subscribe to, so that whenever there is, they have new articles published, you can just read it. So it's more focused and it's also helps you with your commercial awareness at the same time. Yeah.
Wonderful. It's such a good, inputs from both of you. But I truly appreciate few simple things are very helpful, like Google Alert, or, I have a Google Alert for Jindal Global Law School. So whoever, wherever does anything, anytime something pop up, in my mail that someone has written something or some of our alumni is, doing this or published an article, published a paper, or even sometimes even some of our alumni make a LinkedIn update that you are taking up a new job. I receive some Google alert. So it's a great way to be updated about your area of interest, your area of research. And similarly, I have alerts about, of course, legal education and higher education and law schools and so many other things which interest me. But some of the solutions are really simple. One of the students who is attending this session, Taranjeet Singh, he has asked few questions about how to apply for this national or international law firm internships and jobs. Is there any website you can recommend for international law jobs, international law firm jobs? So Anga and Teresa, any specific input on this?
I was actually double checking the website I applied when I was applying for the training contract. It used to be called cvmailuk.com or cvukmail.com. Can't really find it just yet. It is a website where you have all the law firms in the UK that you can apply for training contracts and vacation schemes. And they give a bit of description of each firm, mostly from Legal 500 or other rating sites where they talk like a snippet of the law firm. So you can just have a quick read and see like if that's the kind of firm you want to apply to and look at what opportunities are there. So usually that's mainly for internships, for vacation scheme and training contracts. I would say I can appreciate, I'm a first generation lawyer, so appreciate that people, if you don't have any connections, it is kind of a daunting experience. Like, how do I just take the first step to getting this internship? Like if you're thinking just, I want the internship, how do I do it? I think it's about building your CV, speaking to people, understanding what the process is. And like I said, it doesn't, even if you only have to apply for the vacation scheme in your 3rd or 4th year, start reading about it from your first year and read about what are the opportunities. There are some firms, I think HSF, Hubbardsman Free Hills, have an India internship program. I remember I found out about it in my final year, but you have to apply it in your 2nd year. So I wish I knew about it at that time. So I think it was more about being proactive and applying early on, reading about these things. So there's a lot of, I think, Annika, I remember Anaga coming and speaking about all the opportunities we have and the internship opportunities when I was in my first year, because she was part of the student council. And I remember, oh, that was such a great way to learn. A lot of people did not even attend it, but I think that's also one way you learn so much about just speaking to people and then going from there. So I think, and even websites, law firms itself have all the opportunities in their website, but maybe not necessarily for internships. So I remember sending just an email to one of the UK law firms in Dubai saying, hey, I would like to intern at your firm. Can you tell me what the process is? And I got the internship. So I think it's also about not being hesitant, just going, grabbing every opportunity you can and going through with that rather than thinking about waiting for someone to come and give you the opportunity. I think it's also always about taking charge of your own career. I think that's one thing I learned in the past 5 years. I think you have to take charge of your career. No one is going to do that for you, no matter how brilliant you are. So do just be open-minded and be proactive.
So we have some 10 minutes more left. I know Anga has got this webinar early in the morning, the first thing in the morning, I think. And Teresa has, some meeting, but 10 more minutes. And there are some general questions which I can take up, I can answer. But before doing that, I would like Ankit to share his experience, the inspiration behind setting up the Society of International Law, what we call Jindal Society of International Law, and a student-led initiative popularizing international law and also organizing a lot of lectures from renowned people, from judges and professors to scholars and juries. So I will say in few words, if you could share the inspiration and what all you have planned for this society.
Well, thank you, sir. And just offer a small point addition to what Teresa was saying. Let's be also mindful of the fact that Teresa was perhaps on the top of her class, which is why getting the training contract and vacation scheme was a piece of cake for her. So I think securing marks is also an incredibly important criterion which one must also remember. That being said, and I think this is where perhaps our Vice Chancellor is the shining example. And also Teresa, perhaps, because she wrote to them and they responded. This is what perhaps the Vice Chancellor also did, because he had the vision to have a collaboration with Oxford University, an 800-year-old university, to start a partnership with them when JG was only a fragment of his imagination. Ignorance is a boundless opportunity. And that is what our Vice Chancellor teaches us. I was speaking to a professor who's high up in the hierarchy, and he once said the Vice Chancellor is a bad example. I was quite puzzled, so I asked him, why do you say that? He said that because the Vice Chancellor does so many things, and he does them so brilliantly, no one can actually possibly match that. So these are examples and anecdotes with which my legal and moral education has been sprayed with, and which is why the society was also started. The society was because, to some extent, I had exhausted the opportunities which I could sense at Jindal, and I wanted to expand even further. And in the pandemic, I thought there is no better opportunity to start this, which is why the Jindal Society of International Law got created. Which is why we wanted to give opportunity to students and also professors of international law to share their ideas and to share their visions on the current topics of international law. Now, questions what Teresa and Anaga have been pointing to, have been answering, we've had discussions on these as well. I'll share the link to join our discussion groups so that others can join and also participate in this. And often when I'm speaking to professors, I tell them that these are office hours that I have organized with them. These are office hours that I've organized with them and now are being broadcasted to whoever might be interested. Which is because these are persons whom I read about, whom I know about. And reading is something which gives me a lot of joy. Just before this lecture, I was reading Vaughan Law on international law. It's a pocket-sized edition, but the writing of Vaughan Law, particular British style of writing, is what inspires one. Not only to write like him, but also think like him, which is where the inspiration for this society came from. The society, as I said earlier, is a quorum of thought-provoking discussion. We don't only have a lecture series, we also have a blog, and we also have a podcast, which Tahira heads and perhaps can also share more about. Tahira?
Yes, Ankit, I think you said it all. So our initiative is to bring different minds, different perspectives on a platform for students to engage with. At the end of the day, I think Ankit and I are also still students and we're also still learning. And that is our effort to the JGU community as well. So that's it. That's it from my end.
That was the idea, Tahira and Ankit, why I will like to have two students of law who are still in final year of LLB, right? To engage with people who have graduated many years back, who have a solid work experience, and who are seniors in the profession, because I want this forum to have both our alumni who have done it and doing it, and our students who will draw inspiration from them. So I am seeing a lot of questions. We have just 8-9 minutes more, and there are many general questions which I would like to answer. A question like, say, is BBA LLB a better program than BA LLB? The answer is absolutely no. I mean, no program is better or worse. All 5-year law programs are absolutely equal. Be it a BA LLB or a BBA LLB or a BCom LLB or even a BTech LLB or BSW LLB, you won't believe the nomenclature is so misleading. There are some 20 different nomenclature of 5-year LLB program. In reality, it's not a BA, it's not a BBA, it's not a BCom, it's an LLB program. It's a 5-year integrated LLB. Similarly, there was a question, some Ganesh has asked, a student from top 5 NLU of India or JGU. Now, we should not get into this kind of, comparative exercise. A student from not only top 5 NLU, any NLU in India, or JGU, or even traditional universities like University of Delhi or University of Mumbai or Punjab University, Chandigarh, or anywhere, a student of law is a student. It's upon you how you make use of the time which is available with you, how you utilize each and every day on campus in your studies, and how focused you are. Today morning, Professor Rajkumar, you rightly mentioned, Ankit, we all draw inspiration from him. And I have more regions. He was my college senior as well from Campus Law Center. So he was speaking at Rajiv Gandhi National University of Law, Patiala, for their commencement lecture. And it was so inspiring to hear him. I felt like he's speaking to Jindal students and faculty members in one of our sessions, because after all, there is no difference as such in the students of RGNL Patiala or Jindal, or for that matter, any other law school. They all are students of law. And whatever he says, or a professor will say, it applies to all the students of law. Now I will come to a question about BA Legal Studies Honors Program, which Raghav Sharma has asked. And rightly, Ankit, you have, you gave a very good, I will say, comment on that. This is a new initiative from our law school. And trust me, I have to convince a lot of students to join BA Honors in Legal Studies. If you look at the American higher education system, or even in Canada or Australia, law is always a postgraduate program as a Juris Doctor or JD program. But in India, and there was a question from a student actually, Pramita has asked an interesting question. What is a better idea? A JD in the United States or Canada, or an LLB in India? Now, all these questions I can answer, but we need another event, another occasion for that. And all four of you are so good that even if I do one individual session with you, the questions which are lying pending will only then be answered. But we have a serious limitation of time. And I will just say a few words that doing a 3-year undergraduate degree in legal studies or law, what they call a BA law in, say, Arizona, or say in UC Berkeley, or say University of Wisconsin-Madison, or even BA law in Oxford, Cambridge, King's College, London, and all those places. Many of them are available after class 12. So BA legal studies is nothing but a BA law. But that doesn't satisfy the regulatory requirement of Bar Council of India to become a lawyer. So a BA Legal Studies remains a 3-year undergraduate honors degree, like any BA honors. I did a BA honors in economics. So like Teresa did a BCom honors. Angha, I think, studied some social science subject, right?
Yes, and communications.
Communications from University of Madras.
Correct. That's right.
You went to a very famous college, if I remember correctly.
Ethiraj College for Women.
Ethiraj College for Women, yeah. So Ethiraj College is one of the oldest and prestigious colleges in Madras. So the beauty is the students of BA Legal Studies are not studying communication or economics or commerce. They are actually studying law and legal studies and the foundations, and also in a way the philosophy behind different areas of law. So when they will join the LLB class, I genuinely believe they are certainly going to be extremely bright students and understanding the nuances of law better than a normal graduate of humanities, social sciences, or commerce, because they have studied the foundation of law. So rightly Ankit said, for litigation, for judiciary, for a lot of careers, even for academia, and even for law firms and corporate legal jobs, they will be good in any. So what is happening in the country, I will tell you, Angha, Teresa, and also Ankit and Taira, you may not be aware that in our country, some 20,000 students every year are dropping 1 year time after class 12 to prepare for the entrance exams like CLAT and LSAT. They drop 1 year just to get into a particular law school in the 5-year law program in XYZ law school. I strongly believe the students who studied class 12 after school, your place is a university. Your place is not a coaching center. And your place is not to learn something by rote, preparing for a competitive exam, objective type questions in current affairs and GK and all those things. Rather, it's time for you to develop in a scholarly and intellectual way, which can only be done in a university campus. So it's very, very important for you people to come for this webinar from your own busy schedules in different time zones. I remember when I was considering this event, I was thinking that it should not be a midnight in Canada or in London where Teresa or Anika have to join at an odd hour. So I know our students and faculty members are so committed that during this COVID time, some of our professors were teaching at 2 a.m. in night from different countries, and the students were absolutely not aware that the professor who is teaching is actually in some other country and is in a different time zone. So it's such a pleasure having all of you.
Say one word, which was a question which was asked to me and Tahra. It's asked again, so there is some force dash behind it. With internships and CV building.
Narayan, I can see. Yeah.
Yes, with CV building exercises, there's no hard and fast rule to CV building exercises. For me personally speaking, and at least in some sense for Tahira as well, we were involved with deans and vice deans. She was involved with the dean for the School of International Affairs. I was involved with the vice dean, assisting him in a book chapter on Raphael Lemkin. Lemkin coined the word genocide as we know it today and the jurisprudence behind it. So that was the introduction I got, and I am eternally grateful to Professor Popowski for that. Another question which was asked over here is scholarships and funding required. This question somehow always baffles me, because each university needs investment inside it and also from the other way. Because if you invest pittance and peanuts, you get monkeys. But Jindal is not a zoo or a circus. It's the epitome, it's the mecca of professors, of geniuses from all across the globe with foreign education. Even our vice chancellor, I was watching this recording which he was giving on an earlier occasion, and something he shared with me personally as well. Even for the Rhodes Scholarship he got, Oxford got the money. It's not like Oxford did not get the money. Oxford always gets the money. The university which is funding your scholarship also gets the money. It's just that it doesn't come out of your pocket. That being said, this is the eve of my father's 62nd birthday, and today I promise and I vow in the next 20 years to start a scholarship in his name. And along with my sister, who will be joining Alan and Overy very soon, I vow to start a scholarship in my father's name to help students who could not get this scholarship. And I am not on scholarship, by the way, because of my father's extraordinary practice. But I vow to help those who don't have the opportunity to study in a university like ours, just on the basis of financial reasons. If this is something I can do for the university which has done so much for me, then so be it. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ankit. I mean, I truly appreciate that spirit of instituting a scholarships in your alma mater, because we are a very new university, very new law school. Our actually senior most alumni is here, Anga, 2012 graduate. She was our first batch. Now we will take another maybe 10 years or so for our alumni to come forward. But university from its side has instituted a lot of scholarship. Maybe some 200 students or more have received a scholarship so far only this year, ranging from say 10% to 50% tuition fee. In old times, a lot of our students, maybe Anga or Teresa, I don't know, but they must have studied on some scholarship or other. And I can remember, Ankit, you could not get it because of the parents' ITR, which exceeded the, the parental income limit. That is a new rule we have included in a scholarship policy, that if the parental income exceed a particular amount, the student, howsoever bright and highest scorer in entrance exam he or she is, they won't receive a scholarship, because university wants to give it to them who otherwise may not afford to study at Jindal at all. So it's such a pleasure having all of you here and to have this inaugural session on, our Young Scholars Colloquium, what we have named it. I look forward to having the next one. We are planning to have it either weekly or fortnightly on every Friday or Saturday, the same time, 5 p.m. So maybe next time you will join us as an audience. But thank you so much for being the inaugural speakers and panelists and giving all your time and your extremely valuable inputs and making it a grand success. So thank you all. And thank you all the audience who gave us your weekend, afternoon, evening to hear from our alumni and students and to be a part of this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you.
Any
It's been a
last
real
word,
pleasure.
please feel free.
No, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much. I hope to participate in the future as well. And good luck to everyone. Feel free to drop me a note on LinkedIn. or write to Professor Mishra and I can answer your questions, or we can set up some time to chat.
Thank you so much. I am very happy to have shared my experience and listened to everyone's experience and answer questions. So it's been such a great pleasure to be here. Can I just add one thing? I think Ankit touched on it regarding writing in internet. I think this is one thing I'm really working on right now, drafting in plain English language. And that's something I get a lot of training at White & Case. I got a lot of training at White & Case to make sure we write with brevity and concisely. So that's also something law students can work on right now. By when you're reading, just thinking about how can I make the sentence shorter? How can I make it as crisp as possible so that it's easier for the reader? So you can work on that while also applying for your internships. So thank you so much. Thank you so much.
So thank you, everyone. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. And thank you so much, Professor Mishra, for involving me. And if anybody needs to talk to me, they can drop me an email or they can just drop me a line on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for taking this idea up, and for doing this. I will be more than happy to assist whoever I possibly can. And I do recollect in our telephone conversation, I shared a very special Shakespeare quote, and that sort of builds upon what Teresa was saying. The quote was Shakespeare, who said that lawyers have 1,000-page submissions and they call it briefs. So I think lawyers are notorious for briefs which are 1,000-page long, and brevity is not perhaps our biggest forte, but that is what we aspire towards. And I think aspiration perhaps remains the key of not only this institution but also the leaders of this institution, who drive not only professors but also students alike. And for students present and past, we are grateful to you for this opportunity and for each other opportunity you've handed us. So with so much confidence and patience.
All the best. Such a pleasure. Thank you so much.